Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Tremble, and this is the Executive Pill Podcast. As you know, this show, along with all of our speaking, coaching, consulting, and training services, are laser focused on helping organizations prepare high performing leaders from all backgrounds to successfully transition to and excel in VP and Senior VP executive level positions. And if you and your organization are serious about developing diverse and highly effective executive leadership team, one, you are in the right place. And two, we encourage you to visit us at gpsleadership.org or reach out to us at team@gpsleadership.org today so that we can discuss how we can work together to help you and your organization reach its leadership development and culture elevation goals. Also, the Executive Pill is now one of the top 5% most popular shows in the world. Yes, that is freaking awesome. And this didn't happen by accident. It was you who made this happen. It will be you who determines the continued success of this show. So please, if you enjoy this content, if you feel this content had you growing and thinking and pontificating. I'm using big $10 words today. Please show us some love by clicking the like, clicking the share, and sharing your comments and thoughts in the comment section, because all of this interaction, what really drives the analytics and allows more and more people to see and really engage with the content. So please do your best to click all those things and comment on all those things and share this with at least 2 or 3 people today. Finally, I'm super excited to announce that I'm announcing it, but it's been out for a while now. My new book, Relationships That Work, 4 Simple Steps to Building Intentional Connections in Business and in Life, is now available for purchase on Amazon.com. And I'll tell you, I'm really excited. I've gotten so much positive feedback from emails, from tweets, from not tweets. I'm not a cool Twitter guy, but Instagram, yes, and LinkedIn messages. So many people just saying how much they've grown from the book. And I'll tell you right quick, if you're going to read the book, one of the most coolest things you're going to get, and not if, when you read this book, one of the coolest things you're going to get is the first story. The first story share about a very, very important man. I think it's going to make you fall in love with the book immediately. So then again, that is Relationships That Work, 4 Simple Steps to Building Intentional Connections in Business and Life. You can get that from Amazon and the link in the comment section. Now, with no further ado, let me say today is a good day. See, today we have the phenomenal, always awesome, and always dressed impeccably, Randy Conley. See, Randy currently serves as the Vice President and Trust Practice Leader for Blanchard. He is a co-author of Blanchard's Building Trust Training Program and works with leaders and organizations around the globe, helping them build and restore trust in the workplace. Randy co-authored the book, Simple Truths of Leadership, 52 Ways to Be a Servant Leader and Build Trust, and is a contributing author to 3 other books, including Leading at a Higher Level with Ken Blanchard. His award-winning Leading with Trust blog has influenced 4 million viewers and counting. This man is just phenomenal. Without any further ado, how are you doing today, kind sir?
I'm doing great, Alex. Wow, thank you for a wonderful introduction. You know, what I'm most happy about today is I'm now officially a member of the Handsome Gentlemen's Club, because if I'm here with you, that means we're a couple good-looking dudes having a conversation today.
Look, everyone, I didn't pay him to say that. This is the thing you'll get from this show is that we work in objective facts. Okay.
That's right. Hashtag truth. Nothing but the truth here.
So if you don't mind, I actually just wanted to really quickly, and I hope this is not too personal. I heard someone in the background recently. I thought I heard a different language. I couldn't understand what it was. Okay, what language was that, and who's in the background?
That was canine language. And right outside my office door is a couple of crazy canines, one of which is our dog Shadow, who's almost 7 years old, Shepherd mix. And then we have a new addition to the family, Scooter, who is a 6-month-old terrier mix that we just adopted a couple weeks ago. And normally this area back here is doggy playtime, during the day. And I have the door closed so I can talk to you. And of course, they're scratching at the door trying to get in. So it's real life here, people. This is what this virtual work life is all about, right? You got kids and animals and everything else.
I mean, no, no, you're so right. So first, we'll make this interview snappy because I know the longer we sit in here, the longer they're gonna get upset with me because I am interrupting their time. So I get this, I get it. Um, and when you said that, you got me thinking like, so I've never actually owned two dogs at one time or had two dogs at one time, but I've heard that if you have a dog and that dog is getting older or something like that, it's best to get your next dog before the first dog is gone because the older dog can teach the newer dog like how to where to go to the restroom
Mm.
and so on and so forth. Have you experienced that at all?
Yeah, yeah, I sure have. We've had multiple dogs over the years, and it is, raising pets is such a great analogy for leadership because there are so many things in common, and I don't say that to insult people,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, but just the parallels are eerie, and so yeah, the older dog helps mentor the younger dog, and kind of show them the ropes and what's acceptable and not acceptable, and um, all the norms and routines. And isn't that the way life is in the workplace, right? That's the definition of culture: is here's how we do things around here, and the existing people teach the new people when they're coming
Mhm.
in. And so it's a great learning laboratory for leadership, having pets.
So you knew exactly where I was going with this. I think about, so I work with a lot of organizations and specifically on helping them develop high performing individuals to that executive level. And
Mhm.
one of the things we key on a lot is the importance of mentorship, the importance of sponsorship, right? Those two things being
Mhm.
different. Um, but again, I talk to a lot of organizations before we start working together, and like, hey, can't we just hire somebody? Like, can't we just bring someone in? And like that's what we normally do. They sink or swim. Doesn't that show how tough and the grit they have if we can just bring them into a work
Yeah,
environment and they sink or swim?
right. Yeah. It reminds me, I was talking to a leader one time, and we were talking about just the general theme of learning and development, training people.
Hmm.
And this person said to me, she said, Randy, my one of my previous jobs, my training plan was my manager greeting me, showing me my desk, gave me a Sharpie pen, and said, go for it. And I'm like, okay, you know, that says a lot. And, I think that's maybe some of that old school mentality of, work is a jungle, only the strong survive, survival of the fittest, and they're either going
Hmm.
to sink or swim. And that's just not the reality of today's workplace. People are looking for organizations that value them, that care about them, that give them a bigger purpose,
Hmm.
that they can be a part of. And a lot of that includes how you train and develop people, and so, I think the work you do is so critically important because mentoring and sponsorship, I love the distinction, you called out about those. Very few of us, we like to buy into the self-made, person myth.
Hmm. Hmm.
The reality is pretty much everyone has had others helping them along the way, right? Even if it's just opening a door and giving an opportunity,
Yeah.
that you didn't do that on your own, right? Someone helped you with that. And um, so it fits right in with, my work in terms of building trust and servant leadership, leaders adopting the mindset that their job is to help others succeed. It's not
Yeah.
about you as the leader. It's not about you getting all the glory and the credit. It's about you helping your people be the best that they can be. And so I think if leaders can have more of that mindset, that in turn helps us create more healthy organizations and cultures that all of us thrive in.
Okay, so Randy,
I'm speaking your love language, I think, right? Are we having a moment here, Alex?
we are
I
having a
think
moment.
we're having a moment.
So look, I want to. Okay, so I want to ask you about this, and feel free to say, Alex, I don't like this question, and we'll just edit it out, and no one will know the wiser. And we'll just say we were talking about.
This might be a very short podcast, Alex.
so here's the question. Here's the question. Okay, so my rub with a lot of the talk I hear about leadership is how much of a blessing it is, and how much of a gift it is, and an opportunity, and you should be lucky, and because you have the opportunity to grow. I heard so many leaders talking about this in podcasts and in interviews and in trainings. Um, but behind closed doors, when I talk to my clients, they're like, this is hard. It's difficult. I don't feel like I'm appreciated. And so, yeah, I went to a conference years back. I love how John Maxwell, he said it. He said, the day I die, I'm going to publish my last book. And my last book will be entitled, right now, the one he had right there is called Leaderships.
Yeah.
And he said, when I die on my deathbed, I'm going to publish my last book, and it'll be called Leadership. He's like, I can't publish it now. I'm getting myself in trouble. But so
all the stuff I really wanted to say throughout the years, right?
So I'd love to, if I could have a conversation with, like, why do you feel that there is this public almost branding of leadership being this super glorious thing? We should all just be, thankful that we have the opportunity to be a leader, where behind closed doors, people are like, oh my God, this is so tough. It's so hard. I don't feel appreciated. How am I going to make this happen? I feel like I'm giving and giving and no one even cares. Like, why do you think there's this dichotomy?
Wow. Alex, I love that you are just calling out the truth, because that is true. Leadership is hard. It's hard work. And those two things you mentioned are not, in my mind, mutually exclusive. Mm-hmm. They can both coexist at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it is a gift to be able to influence someone. And at Blanchard, we take a very broad view of leadership, and that is leadership is an influence process. Mm-hmm. So whenever you're trying to influence the mindsets, the behaviors, the attitudes of someone else, you're engaging in leadership. And so, we're all leaders in some sense, whether it's, as a formal leader at work, as a parent, as a coach, as a mentor, we all have different leadership roles. And although it is a gift to be able to influence people, it is hard work. It is hard work, and a lot of times you don't feel fully appreciated. Especially leaders, in that middle level, right? That are getting pressure from above, from senior leaders, you got to execute on these strategic priorities, and they're getting pressure from the bottom up, from their people saying, this makes no sense to us. They think we should do this. And yet you're that person in the middle, right? That has to translate from the top to the rest. And it's hard work. It is exhausting. And I think it speaks to the importance of leaders needing to develop practices in their own life that refills their bucket.
Yes.
Right. Whether that's, the basics of regular time off work, vacation, whether it's having some sort of peer support network or accountability group, trusted advisors, your own personal board of directors, however you frame that. I think it's really important for leaders to find ways that They're filling their own bucket because they're constantly pouring out into others.
Yeah.
Um, but it's hard work. Leadership is not for the faint of heart. So anyone who thinks, oh, life would be so much easier, if I just had the supervisor title or if I just had the manager title, then I could boss everyone around, right? Nope. Nope.
Man,
Believe me, life is a lot easier many times as that individual contributor when all you have to worry about is yourself.
I still remember, like, early in my career, I was that mid-level person, and I was like, oh man, as soon as I get a promotion, it'll be so much easier. I got a promotion. I was like, okay, it's not easier, but maybe I'm just not high enough. So let me get that next promote. And I kept going
Yep.
up and up, and I'm like, this is not getting easier. Like, what is
Nope.
going on here?
Nope. It's just, different challenges
Hmm.
and um, different scenarios and situations you have to deal with. It does not get easier. So, my hat is off to leaders because, you and I know have
Hmm.
from having been in the trenches, it's hard work. And so
Yeah,
when I get to work with leaders to help them in their leadership journey, I'm like, I'm with you,
yeah.
folks, I'm with you and I'm here to support you because we our leaders in all aspects of our society need a lot of help. We've
Oh,
got
yeah.
plenty of opportunity for improved leadership in the world. And
Hmm.
um, so that just lends even more importance to the type of work we get to
We
do.
do. Well,
Yeah.
it reminds me of can everyone who's a consistent listener knows that I just had a little dude a few months ago now. And like my wife and I were really surprised. Like when we had our child, and we are so freaking happy. Like we're ecstatically happy, we are happy and we love him so much.
Hmm.
And like you said, it's not mutually exclusive. This is hard work, and we're tired and we're frustrated, and there is a belief like, oh, you got to love every aspect of it. No, I don't love getting up. I was just telling Randy, every he went from sleeping 3.5 hours every night to now he's sleeping 2, and that's a big difference. And
Yeah.
like my wife and I had to have a conversation about how, look, it's okay if we don't like this. We love him, we're doing what we got to do, but we don't like it right now. But
Yeah.
we're gonna work together to get through this. And so, what we always now are very vocal about talking about these things, whether it be childhood, whether it be the IVF process, because that was another big thing for us because we didn't realize so many people went through IVF because no one
Mm-hmm.
talks about it, right? And so the
Hmm.
same thing is like for leadership. I want to be very vocal about this to say, look, it is awesome. You get to do some phenomenal stuff. You get to lead certain initiatives and priorities. You get to prioritize certain things, right?
Hmm.
And you're not going to like every aspect of it. So
Yep.
let's have a conversation about it. So you walk into this eyes wide open versus being like I was.
Yeah. So true. So valuable to walk into it eyes wide open, know the good, the bad, the ugly, right? Because, at the end of the day, for people who really thrive on leadership, there is
Mhm.
so much more good, that
Oh
you
yeah.
get out of it.
Hmm.
The pain, the hard work is worth it. And, not everyone is cut out to for people leadership. And that's
Hmm.
okay. I
Hmm.
think that's a big shift we have to keep making in
Yeah.
organizations is that we need to have other career mobility options for folks
Hmm.
rather than just moving into a people management role
Yeah.
because it's not for everyone. And so, for anyone out there listening that may be considering people leadership, I think it's really worth exploring. Is people leadership going to fit your temperament, your work style? And there's lots of surveys and articles and stuff you can find out on the web, to help you make that decision. But it's really important to think about is management for you because
Yeah.
it's a whole different game that you're playing than when you're an individual contributor. So just going in eyes wide open can really set the stage for a much more successful launch into people leadership.
And if I can add, Randy, I think you should feel, not you, you, the audience, anyone listening, um, should feel comfortable with saying, hey, if I tried this and it's not my thing,
Mhm.
I don't need to lock myself into it.
That's right.
It doesn't mean that you are lesser than, that you are not worthy, that you failed. It doesn't. None of those things. You're not any of those things just because you find out that, hey, this isn't my cup of tea. But I
Mhm.
can focus my energy and effort and strategies and expertise somewhere else to still make to make value add for the organization. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And there will be seasons of your life
Mm,
where, you go through seasons where maybe you really enjoy and thrive in the people leadership role.
yeah.
And then there's a time where, life circumstances change and you're like, this is a new season where I'm more, focused as an individual contributor.
Hmm.
And that doesn't mean that you won't move into a formal leadership role sometime later, you know? So that's one thing that I've learned through my leadership career is trying to grow more in tune with my own seasons of life and understanding where my motivations lie, where I feel like I can make the most impact and add the most value. And remember, if you take that broad view of leadership, if you're engaging in influence, you're still leading, even if you're
Hmm.
not in a
Hmm.
formal people management, role. So I, I think that's just a wonderful thing about leadership is taking that influence point of view.
Well, you once talked about, you were talking about leadership in difficult and complex times, and you were talking about how when you are in those complex and difficult times, the one thing you don't want to do is lie to your staff. Actually, you said spinning. You don't want to spin,
Mm,
and you said in fact you said spinning is great for the gym. Um,
yeah,
I
we
like
we were
that.
talking about not spinning the truth, right?
Yes,
Since my
yes,
work
yes.
centers on trust and um, a lot of well, not a lot. One of the primary ways you build trust with people is to be authentic,
Hmm.
right? And transparent. People know when they look at you, I know what I'm going to get, right? Because
Yeah.
Alex he's consistent in his behavior, he's competent in what he does, he follows through on his commitments, he's a person of integrity, right? I know what I'm going to get from you. And when we start feeling that urge to sort of spin the truth
Hmm. Hmm.
or circumstances, we're usually doing it out of a self-protective mode, right? We don't want to look bad.
Hmm.
We don't want to appear like we made a mistake or we're not fully on top of whatever, the situation is. So we start
Yeah.
to spin it, to make ourselves look a little bit better. And yeah, Alex and I were chatting before and I said, mm, you know, save spin for the gym, not the workplace. That's spin belongs in the gym, not the workplace. Yeah.
Well, what is the difference, and or how do you differentiate between spinning and having a positive outlook on a difficult situation?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh boy. I think that's really critically important. One thing that comes to my mind is being forthright and acknowledging the reality with your
Hmm.
team. I think it's perfectly fine and it builds credibility with your team when you say, "Hey team, I know this new technology that we have to implement, it stinks right now, right? It's hard, right? There's bugs in the system. It's making your job longer and more complex and time consuming than what it was before. I get it. And we have to remember the goal, right? That we're
Hmm.
striving for. When
Hmm.
we get through this rocky patch, we're eventually going to get to a point where it's actually saving us time. It's making our job easier. So, once again, just like we were saying being a leader is not mutually exclusive to also saying this is really hard work.
Mm,
It's the same with
yeah.
truth and authenticity, right? They're not mutually exclusive. We can say this current circumstance is really difficult, and I'm a big fan of the word and instead of
Hmm.
but, when we're communicating, and we're going to get to a better place. And I'm here to partner with you, walk that road with you, and we're going to get there.
So how do you, again, you are the world foremost expert on trust. So how do you create trust? I always tell them, I'm gonna prep it with this. I always tell people, like, it's interesting. Some people say, "Oh, I trust you," or "I don't trust you," but I don't feel like
Mhm.
that's a thing, because like there's people who I trust. Or like, there's a guy I know right now. If I need to give him my social security number, my credit card number, all that stuff, no problem. Here you go. I trust you to
Yep.
not do anything crazy with that. Would I give
Yep.
that same guy, when I tell him to come to this interview for me? I don't think I trust him to do it as well as I. So,
Right.
like, what is trust composed of, and how do you then develop trust?
Yeah. You're pointing out a really important distinction, and that is trust is situational and contextual,
Mm,
right?
mm, mm, mm.
Um, when you look at the academic research on trust, and as sort of a trust nerd, I geek out on that, reading research papers and all that stuff. There are 3 to 4 common factors that comprise what trust is in a relationship.
Mhm.
And I personally am a fan of a 4-factor model, and that is uh, a person's competence,
Mhm.
their integrity,
Mhm.
their relationship connectedness, and their reliability.
Mm.
And so at Blanchard, we created a acronym, a model to help operationalize trust.
Mhm.
And so we call that model the elements of trust. And the acronym is ABCD. A stands for able. Are you competent in what
Mm.
you do? Right? Do you have the
Mhm.
skills, knowledge, expertise for your role? Able. B is for believable. Do you act with integrity? Right? Do you have
Mm.
honorable values? Do you live out your values, walk the talk? Right? Do
Yeah.
you treat people fairly? So that's believable. Are you connected? Do you care about others? Do you build rapport? Do you communicate openly, share information about yourself, about the organization? So that's the relationship, the connected piece. And then the fourth element of trust is dependable. Do you honor your commitments? Do you do what you say you're going to do? And so by remembering those 4 elements, the ABCDs of trust, right? Trust has
Mhm.
its own language that we speak. And I like to say that's the alphabet of trust, the ABCDs:
Mhm.
able, believable, connected, dependable. If we use behaviors that demonstrate those 4 elements of trust, we will build trust.
Mhm.
If we don't, we won't. And that's because a fundamental truth about trust is that it's based on perceptions.
Yeah.
And those
Yeah.
perceptions are formed by what? The behaviors we
Behaviors.
use,
Mhm.
right? So if we want people to perceive and actually believe that we're trustworthy, we need to use behaviors that illustrate the ABCDs of trust.
Yeah.
And so that allows us, when we have a model, a framework for trust, that allows us to take this big, nebulous, esoteric issue about trust and put it into an operational model that we can say, okay, now I know what trust is. I know the behaviors to use. That makes trust a skill, right? We
Mm.
can teach people the behaviors that build trust. So now trust becomes a skill set that we can develop rather than just this random thing that may or may not happen in a relationship. So, breaking it down in that way really puts trust much more under our control than most people give it credit for.
I love how you break it down, and you make me think of an event recently. So I was hired to lead a fireside chat, this big event. I think over 700, almost 1,000 people in the room. I was excited. The people, the individual I was on the stage with was a phenomenal leader, James Ree, former CEO of Ashley Stewart. Him and I were looking forward to having a conversation. The day before the event, I get called by the event manager, and they say, "Hey, look, I got really bad news for you. You just got bumped." The director of the entire organization found out who you're interviewing, and they want to be on stage with them. It's just like, okay,
All right.
no bad blood. It's the director wants to do it. It is what it is, right? So I kind of like just took it and went on and called a couple of my mentors, kind of just talking about the situation, and they said, you need to still show up. Like, it's the next day, just show up. Like, show up. You never know what's going to happen. Show up ready to go into the day. Maybe you connect with them one-on-one. Human, you can do some stuff later on your own. Okay, cool. So the next morning, get up early. Out the door by 7:00, getting there to make sure I'm there in time, just to make sure I'm there. Pull up. The guy, they take me to the green room. They say, "Okay, Alex. So the guy, he's about to go on stage. The director's next to the stage too. So you're gonna go up too." I'm like, okay. They walk me to the front, and then they say, "Okay, so look, they actually would love for you to be on the stage with both of them." And I was like, "Oh, good thing I showed up." Right? And so
Yeah.
you talk about trust. Immediately, the person who was managing the whole event was like, "Thank you, Alex. I didn't know this was going to happen, but I really appreciate you showing up and just being ready." So
Yep.
he trusted him and I can work together in the future on these types of things
Yep.
as well.
That's a wonderful example of you displaying those 4 elements of trust, right? Like you were bringing your ability to the situation. That's why they had reached out to you in the first place, right? Because they know that you're skilled in that area, you're able. You really, in spades, demonstrated the believability part, acting with integrity, even though you've said, "I don't need to be here to do this fireside chat. I'm still going to be there as a support to show that, I want it to succeed." You connected with them relationally, and you were dependable. You showed up. And just the showing up factor, the dependability, the lack of dependability is the number one way we typically erode trust, right? We just don't follow through on what we say we're going to do, or we're not timely. Reminds me of the quote Woody Allen, the famous movie director. I believe he said 90% of success is just showing up, right? I mean, just being there, sticking with it, and that builds trust. And people shouldn't underestimate that.
I'd like to. One, thank you so much for calling out all those A, B, C, and D's in that situation. That's really cool. Two, I want to throw a final question at you before we start to wrap up. So you talked about showing up, being dependable. The people who are listening to this show are people who are high performers, who are getting ready to be an executive and or already an executive. And that these people don't always manage their own schedule, their own time. And a lot of the time they can be pulled in so many different directions. So it may feel or look like they're not dependable, but they're not in control of it. People think they're in control, but they're not really in control. So how do those individuals still have some sense of dependability when they know they're being pulled in different directions that they may not have full control over?
Right. One thing that comes to mind is setting clear expectations with people. Because when we have missed expectations or failed expectations, that's when we start to erode trust, because
Yeah.
the senior leader, they're thinking one thing, like, yeah, my assistant handles my calendar. If meetings get rearranged at the last minute or I'm unavailable, people know that. They understand that. Well, they may not understand that, right?
Mm-hmm.
All those other
Mm-hmm.
people may have the expectation that, no, I booked an appointment or a meeting and I expect the leader to show up, right? And so being really clear on expectations, like in that case, the leader making it known
Yeah.
regularly,
Mm-hmm.
throughout their time, is like, hey folks, this may or may not happen. I'm not intentionally blowing you off, things happen. It reminds me, I actually had that same experience. I was leading a large team at Blanchard, and I I have regular one-on-one meetings with my direct reports, and one of my managers, I was in this very crazy busy time where I had to cancel several of our one-on-one meetings, because I was getting pulled into other meetings or had other,
Mm-hmm.
fires pop up.
Mm-hmm.
And although I was in control of my schedule, I didn't have an assistant managing it. I was canceling meetings with this person and I wasn't providing any context or explanation. I was just like, real
Mm.
quick, like, hey, I got pulled into another meeting. Can we reschedule? Right. And her name was Wendy, is Wendy. And she came to me and she said, Randy, I have to tell you, after this happened several times, you're starting to erode trust with me. She called
Ooh,
me on my own
I
stuff.
love it.
She called me on my own stuff and she said, your dependability is suffering a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
Wendy, if anyone's familiar with the disc model, or she's like a C on the disc, very detail oriented, very process oriented, very
Mm-hmm.
organized. And so she would save up her agenda items to talk to me about, very purposeful. And I was blowing her off. I wasn't thinking that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wasn't intentionally trying to erode trust with her and make her life more difficult. But by virtue of a couple of things, number one being Wendy knows that same model of trust that I do. So having that as a common language between us helps talk about trust things in a very non-defensive,
Yeah.
unemotional way, right? A very objective way. And second, as part of my leadership point of view, I had previously told my managers, I want you to hold me accountable to living
Mm-hmm.
out my values, right? If you see me not acting in alignment with these values that I've shared with you, I want you to talk to me about it, because it's likely not my intention that I'm purposely trying to do that. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to unintentionally be doing something, to really negatively impact you. So, back to the original question, like what can senior leaders do is, I think, be open and honest with people that sometimes these things happen, you know, share your values with your team, ask them to hold you accountable so that they have that freedom, because there's nothing like authority that will squash people's
Mm.
risk taking behavior, right? It's like, well, that's the boss. I can't really
Mm-hmm.
bring that up with that person, right? So we as leaders have to make it really safe and comfortable for people to have those honest conversations with us. And, it's not a quick fix. That's
Yeah.
not going to happen overnight, right? That's the consistency of your behavior as a leader over time that helps foster that culture within your team.
Thank you so much for that example, Randy. And I would like to just share one last thing with the audience in regards to this. It's that okay? So now this is not for like this is for those individuals right now who really want to connect with someone. Okay, um, if you've been reaching out to someone, what I've learned is no response does not mean no.
Mm,
Um, I've had on the show, SVPs, I've had CEOs, I've had Olympians, I've had actors, I've had. This show is focused on finding the top tier leaders within their industries. So the reality is that I have definitely had many times. This is not an okay for future guests to do this. I've had many times where it's taken me a long time to actually have the interview. My longest time actually is like 7 months, just because
Wow.
every time we were just about to do it, something happened, and I
Mm,
call it like something in the news happened, and I know they're being pulled away. Like it
yeah.
was just. But here's
Yeah.
the reality: is like because I stayed focused and always assumed positive intent,
Hmm.
we eventually made these things happen. So for
Yeah.
those of you who are looking to connect with someone and that person is not responding, or they're not being as intentional with their language as Randy was saying about saying, hey, this is what's happening, unless they tell you they don't want to talk to you, I always assume positive intent. Randy, thank you so much for being here today. I will just again open the floor to you. Is there anything that you'd like to share with our guests as we begin to wrap up?
Well, I would share, Alex, that I truly believe trust is the foundation of being a successful leader. Trust is the foundation of any healthy, successful relationship. And so I would encourage all your listeners to just pause for a moment and think about that. How are you embodying those four elements of trust, right? How are you demonstrating your ability, your believability, your connectedness, and your dependability? And do a little self audit. And if you find that you're lacking maybe in one of those elements, it does not mean you're untrustworthy. Okay. Be very clear on that. It just means you have an opportunity to use different behaviors that will allow you to build more trust with others. And so there's lots of resources to help you with that. I would point you to my blog, leadingwithtrust.com, over 400 plus articles on trust and leadership that you could peruse. Um, Check out my company's website, blanchard.com. We've got, actual training programs that you can avail yourself of. Um, my latest book with Ken Blanchard, Simple Truths of Leadership. I think, is it okay to show a copy of it? Do a
Absolutely.
little promo, like, yep, Simple Truths of Leadership.
That's a nice cover.
52 ways to be a servant leader and build trust. We've got lots of just very simple truths and action steps that
Mm,
can help you be a trusted servant leader. So just remember, trust is not something that magically happens. You have to be intentional about it.
yes.
And the more intentional that you are, the better off you'll be as a leader.
Randy, again, we could not have ended on a better note, because like you said, for leadership, without trust, I don't know if you can be an effective leader.
Mhm.
I think
True.
you're absolutely correct. And what I'm always talking about, is helping people build intentional and strategic relationships. And again, I'm not sure if you can build intentional and strategic relationships without trust, right? And
Yeah.
so,
Let me add one more thing there,
please,
Alex. You can have short-term success without trust,
mm,
right? You
yes,
can you can take the slash and burn mentality and you can, drive up revenue or lower cost or whatever, for this short-term basis. You
hmm,
will not have effective long-term success without trust.
yes.
And that's where you really have to reorient your perspective to say, I'm in this for the long haul. And if that's the case, trust is absolutely imperative.
Well, then I'm going to now also correct my language, because I wouldn't talk. I always tell myself I'm not talking about relationships. You can have a lot of relationships that have no trust in it, actually, but healthy relationships.
Yeah, there you go.
You want to have
There you
healthy
go.
relationships. You need to have trust in it. So, look, everyone, go out there and purchase Randy's new book. Purchase my new book, Relationships That Work. You can find it on Amazon. Look, everyone, you know where I'm going with this. If you found anything of value Don't just look back. Don't just say that person, that gal, that person over there should have been here. They could have learned from this. If they would have just been here, if they would have invested, don't do that. Don't just look back, reach back. Bring them to the table, and even more impressively, bring this content to them. It's not difficult. Click the share button, click the like button, comment, share this within your circles, because I promise you, if you found something of value, I promise you, the people in your relationship, your circles, will find value of this as well. So, as always, I encourage you to stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving. See ya. Thanks for listening to The Executive Appeal with Alex Tremble. I invite you to follow The Executive Appeal wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow me, your host, Alex Tremble, across all socials or via email for exclusive webinars, courses, and in speaking engagements on continued topics of executive leadership. So, until next time, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving.